A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime Daily, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. We are recording this on Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. Why do I know that date, Josh? Because it's my son's birthday. Happy birthday, Lorenzo!
Happy birthday, Lorenzo. Very cool.
He's 23 today. Woo!
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we all survived it. I know you're in the throes of it.
I know. Looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Our guest today is Josh Ritter, who's a former LA County prosecutor, and he is a current criminal defense attorney based here in Los Angeles. And he also is the host of True Crime Daily's Sidebar podcast. Welcome back, Josh. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me back.
And how is your daughter? And how old is Ryan?
She is a year and a half, and she's fantastic. And she's now walking and running and grabbing and demanding things. So we've got our hands full. Yes,
you do. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's a wonderful update on Ryan. We're always so excited about the growing crime family here. So many people, new babies. We're so excited.
Oh, thank you.
So here's what we're looking at this week. A former employee of the Oregon Department of Human Services is accused of kidnapping and sexually assaulting a defenseless special needs woman. This is a woman who can only communicate through drawings and pictures. She's nonverbal, okay? Living in a facility to aid her, protect her. The alleged assault occurred while the caseworker was taking the woman out for one of those secure special visits where you go outside into the community and you enjoy a lunch out. Yeah, that's what happened here. But first, an even more horrendous case. This is an update on a Missouri case that we covered here on the podcast when it first happened. This is a case about a little girl, 4 years old, who drowned in an icy lake. She was beaten also, blisters everywhere, bruises around her neck and her body. Why was she beaten? Oh, sometimes you're always saying the why, the why, the why. Here's the why. The people accused of killing her thought she had the devil in her. She's 4 years old. Incredible. Josh, this is insanity.
It is. You cover a lot of disturbing stories on the show. Over the course of my career, I've read hundreds, if not thousands, of police reports that are disturbing. In reviewing the affidavit attached to the complaint in this case, I had a tough time getting through it. This is just so incredibly disturbing. The torture that this young girl went through while, and we'll talk about it, while all she's trying to do is run to her parents for help, and they're doing nothing if not aiding and abetting in this whole thing. It shakes you to your core how disturbing this whole thing is.
It's so disturbing. It's so horrific. I honestly am surprised it has not received more coverage. I really am. We did it when it happened because we just could not believe it. And then we've been waiting for the cases to progress. And there's an update. But again, not big headlines. And I don't understand why this case isn't getting the attention that it deserves. Because honestly, the real demons here are all the adults in her life. They're the demons. They're the real demons with evil in them. And I believe that. Yeah. So we're talking about the murder of 4-year-old Jessica Mast. She was killed by a couple who lived next door to the Mast family. They all went to the same church. And what's also confusing here is that Jessica's family and one of the neighbors, they all have the same last name, but the neighbors and the family are not related. So I just want to clarify that as we're trying to follow who allegedly did what. So one of the neighbors accused of killing Jessica has just pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. His alleged accomplice and the parents are still facing charges for their roles in this murder. So here's the thing. Ethan Mast is the neighbor. He is the one who pleaded guilty to Jessica's murder. According to the police, Ethan Mast and his live-in girlfriend, Courtney Allman, were the ones who killed Jessica, if you will, physically. But the parents are not without guilt here, in my opinion. Both were charged. According to Jessica's parents, the neighbors tortured the whole family, and the only one spared in the house was a tiny little baby. That in itself is a miracle, that they didn't do anything to this tiny baby. And this all happened right before Christmas in December of 2020. So about a year and a half ago, right? Yeah.
Right.
Sunday, December 20th at 1 a.m., a call is made to 911. James Mast, the father, Jessica's father, tells the dispatcher that his 4-year-old daughter, Jessica, is dead. Deputies respond to this rural home near Cole Camp. They find a 4-year-old girl wrapped in a pink blanket on the bedroom floor. Investigators said that the girl was clearly already dead. She was cold to the touch, severe purple bruising everywhere, ruptured blisters. I mean, it's just horrific, the state of her body.
Yeah.
The father tells the police that the child had been beaten, submerged in a freezing pond. It is December in Missouri, people.
Yeah.
Submerged, held down in, can you imagine how frightened she was? And then they take her lifeless body and they just leave it on the shoreline. Do you know how cold, how bitter cold it is, even if she had any ounce of life left in her?
Right.
And then they finally wrap her in the blanket and bring her in the house. And I guess, what are they all doing? Talking, figuring out, oh, what do we do now?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll add one, disturbing little detail to this that was in the police report. When the father was asked, why did he wait so long to call? Because apparently the child was still alive, clinging to life, but still alive when they brought her back into the house. And he said he didn't call until he realized that she was dead. She maybe could have been saved. Had he called immediately, realizing that she was slipping into some sort of distress or hyperthermia, she might have been saved. But he waited until she was dead. And then he thought, well, maybe I better call the police. It just is so disturbing.
Josh, this dad could have called somewhere weeks into this because supposedly this torture went on for weeks by the neighbors. So I agree with you. He had one final opportunity to save this child and he didn't take that opportunity, but he had multiple chances to stop this.
100%.
Especially since, it seems like what was going on here, whether he bought into it or whether he was brainwashed, I really don't know what to believe here. But, what kind of control did these neighbors have on him?
Yeah. I mean, there's this, like you've pointed out, there's this kind of weird religious element to all of this. They're talking about the child being possessed and that they're just trying to train the child and they go to the same church. But I'm sorry. Now being a new father, I cannot imagine witnessing the kind of torture over weeks to my 4-year-old. And by the way, also the 2-year-old who happened to have survived and allowing it to happen and doing nothing about it. And that why I believe they're charged criminally. You cannot use the excuse of I was afraid or this is a religious thing and allow a child to be essentially tortured to death.
Right. So as you said, there were 3 children in the house. There was Jessica, who's 4, 2-year-old toddler, and a baby. So when investigators go to the house, of course, they first find Jessica. Then they find the girl's mother, Mary Mast, who's 29 at the time, and her 2-year-old son. They were severely beaten and they were taken to the hospital. The little baby, an infant girl, appeared not to be harmed. So the father claims that these actions really are the work of what I would say the devil neighbors, 21-year-old Courtney Allman and 35-year-old Ethan Mast. Here's what's amazing. The father told investigators that the beatings had been going on for 2 weeks, that he too had suffered beatings, he said, with a spoon. Now, please explain to me, if the only weapon these idiots from next door have is a frickin' wooden spoon, this man doesn't have the ability to stand up to them and defend his family?
Yeah. And like you pointed out, it's not like they're trapped in some cave and being held at gunpoint. point. At any time, they talk about the neighbors go back home and they're just waiting for them to come back. Call 911 in between. It's just beyond understandable as to why the father especially allowed this to take place for as long as he did. And that excuse of religion is only going to go so far with jurors. And I do think these people will be held criminally responsible.
Oh, absolutely. And as you said, that the neighbors would go home. Apparently, there were security cameras in the house, which the neighbors had access to. So then they could actually watch the family. So I guess they would know if they called 911. But so what? The police will show up. Then what? I mean, come on. None of this, made. But it's interesting. Apparently, the beatings were not videotaped because the police said that when they saw the cameras and they played back the cameras, they could see the neighbors entering, conversations, looking at cell phones, and then the camera being in the kitchen being turned off. So we don't believe that was captured. Of course, we don't know everything until this goes to trial, but that's our belief. Now, here's the other thing. So when, again, and the police are questioning the father here, asking, why did you allow the beatings to continue on his wife and his children? He again responded that his wife had been identified as being a demon, having a demon inside her, and so did Jessica and the other child. So horrible things were going to happen, he believed, he told police, if this situation of the demons was not taken care of. Now, here's the other thing. Prosecutors have said that the father claimed that he also was forced to sexually abuse Jessica as well. Give me a break. I'm sorry.
Just disgusting.
I don't believe any of this bunk. So ultimately, all the adults in this case have been charged, including Jessica's parents, as we've said. The two surviving masked children, the toddler and the baby, have been placed in protective custody. Now, let's look at the parents and their role in all of this. So James and Mary Mast each face first-degree murder charges for Jessica's killing. And according to the official complaint, when the cops found the mother, Mary, all beaten up in the house, they asked her why we've been talking about the dad, let's talk about mom.
Sure.
Why didn't she call police? What happened here? She said, quote, "This has been a huge God thing that they convinced us of." What the hell does that mean? Is a big God thing? What?
I don't get it. She made another comment when they said they were going to take the children away. She said, "I understand. That's fine because I shouldn't have fallen for it."
Fallen for it?
Yeah. It's like now with a child dead, cold and frozen to death dead. Now you realize that maybe you shouldn't have fallen for it, or maybe this religious thing had gone a little bit too far.
It's the blasé way in which the mother and the father answer these questions, as if it's like, well, because they had the devil in them. Oh, well, it was a God thing. That's the thing, as opposed to the horror of it all. The responding police officer wrote in the report that they were taken by the fact that the father was not acting more upset. Like, if a parent calls and says that their child is dead, they're generally hysterical.
You would expect them to be falling apart. Mm-hmm. And he's, like you said, kind of blasé and matter of fact. Oh yeah, here I wrapped her in a blanket when I realized she had died. There she is on the bed.
The father further told police that God was speaking through the female neighbor, that would be Courtney, and he told police that he was threatened with torture if he called police and didn't go along with it. So he's claiming, hey, it's not my fault because they threatened me. So I really have to hand it to the responding officer here, because he told the father, this is all in the report, that God would never tell anyone to kill little Jessica. And the cop wasn't done. And the cop told him, because he asked him, like, okay, so you're talking about God, what religion are you? Then the officer tells the father, and that a true Christian, and I'm quoting from the police report, and that a true Christian would never let this happen to their child. And that is absolutely the truth.
Yeah. You got to wonder, is there some sort of mental illness here, or or brainwashing or something. I just can't imagine two parents getting to this point where they're allowing this to happen or cooperating with it, participating. It's just it's so inexplicable.
I suppose it's possible. When we originally did this case, Dr. Judy Ho was on the program, and she was talking about those issues of brainwashing, mind control, all of these things, which, we do see. But at the end of the day, while it may be a partial explanation for behaviors, it is by no means an excuse, right?
Absolutely not.
Because
certainly
they
not
had
in a criminal
so
context.
many opportunities. It's not like this happened in a short period. It was several hours. They were under duress. They didn't know what was going on. I'm not saying that that's excusable, but different things happen in a short period of time. That's a one-time event versus, a series of events over the course of several weeks with this continued torture of the children. And the worst part of this is, as Jessica is being tortured with a belt and other things, she's screaming for her parents who are standing there to help her.
That was the part that just ripped me apart. There's the officer describes how the parents told how the child would be running for them, trying to get away from these savage beatings, and that the parents would run away from the children because they were told that God wanted it this way. And you just picture that scene of this helpless child with no one to turn to in the world but their parents, and their parents are abandoning him while essentially her life is slowly being taken away from her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are the most frightening moments for children, I think. We've seen this play out in several cases where in those last seconds of life or those last minutes of life, and in Jessica's case, the last 2 weeks of her life, at those most frightening moments where her instinct is always to run to her parents for protection, it is always the parents denying the protection. And that, to me, I think, reaches to the core of a child's fear and needs and most basic needs. So that's why I find this case just like so horrific. Now, the parents, Jessica's parents, did tell the cops, whether any of this is true or not, that the neighbors just showed up one day and declared that there was a demon situation and they needed to enforce it. So it's very possible that the first conversation maybe wasn't all that violent and it was a sense of curiosity. It's like, what do you mean that they're possessed? Why do you say that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that it could have built up. It could have been, I imagine it didn't immediately start with beatings with a belt and, half drownings in the pond, that it started slowly. But like you've pointed out several times, eventually you reach a point where you've got to, are these people not interacting with anyone else in their community? Are they not able to speak to coworkers and talk about, hey, is this wrong? Should I get the police involved? For weeks this was going on and they were doing nothing. You can't fathom it.
No, and I think if you just keep a few things in perspective, it's holidays, kids are likely out of school by this time, we're still in the throes of a pandemic, so people are still at home. So I think if you keep that in perspective about how couldn't anyone know, and it was a fairly rural area as well. Yeah. So I think all those things led to this perfect storm and opportunity because of that.
Yeah, good point.
It's also interesting that the beatings started with Jessica. So they all started with the child, and then it moved on to Mary, the mother, and the toddler. Yeah. So Courtney Allman, the neighbor, she is charged with second-degree murder, has been given approval for a change of venue. Oh, because she couldn't get a fair trial, because everyone in the neighborhood has heard of the horrific things that took place in that house. Anyway, It's been granted. It's been granted. I mean, the last thing you would want is for something to happen like a conviction to then be overturned because it wasn't a fair and impartial jury. I get that, people. I get it. I just, I have limited compassion here. Do you find that interesting that the change of venue was granted?
Well,
they rarely are.
They rarely are. And usually because these trials are taking place in much larger communities where you can say, well, listen, this community is so diverse that I'm sure we can find folks that have no idea about this case. But maybe this community is so small that it is absolutely the only thing anyone is talking about in the coffee shop and local grocery store. And so they felt we just cannot find a jury who has not made up their mind about this. The other aspect might be they were thinking about, I don't know what this local kind of congregation religious community is. I don't know. Maybe they felt they couldn't find folks that were not attached to that church in some sort of way.
Mm-hmm. And the sheriff has said, because immediately when this happened and was discovered, because this is a huge case for this small community and this police department, he said everyone was worried that there was a cult in town. And he says there's no evidence of it being a cult. Yes, they were all connected through a church, but this would be, the actions of individuals within that church, not sanctioned by the church. But you're probably right. It's probably a pretty big church, and trying to find someone not connected to it might be very difficult. The court is also waiting for the results of a mental examination that was requested by Courtney's attorney in January. We don't know the results of that. You asked about mental illness.
Not surprising. I mean, you could see they might want to pursue some sort of insanity defense. Not surprising.
She's being held without bond. Now, as for the parents of Jessica, they are charged with first-degree murder. And as far as we know, they've not gone to trial yet. Our producer contacted the prosecutor's office for an update there. Strategy-wise, Josh, what do you think about this? You go after the neighbors first. Everybody's charged. You go after the neighbors first, trial-wise. The first one, he pleads out.
Yeah.
Courtney looks like she's probably headed to trial, and the parents will be last. What's the strategy there?
I don't know. It's funny too, because the who sounds like the most culpable person is the male neighbor, pled to a second degree. And you can understand how second degree might have been on the table, because we're talking about intent, right? When you've got first degree, there must be some sort of premeditation. And I imagine a built-in defense for both of the neighbors is going to be, we're not trying to kill anybody. We were trying to help. We were trying to exorcise this demon from this child. I don't buy it. I don't think many people would buy it, but you could understand how that would at least attack the mens rea, the mental state. As far as why the parents would be tried later, I'm not sure if there is a strategy behind that, either from the defense or the prosecution. If I am the defense attorneys for the parents, though, I would think I would be trying to cooperate with authorities as much as possible to receive some sort of leniency and turn on the neighbors, because end of the day, we're upset with these parents for what they didn't do, and we're just so distraught by how do you allow that to happen to your child. At the end of the day, the actions were taken by those neighbors. They're the ones holding the belt. They're the ones dunking the child into the lake. They're the ones who actually directly caused the death of this child, and the parents just stood by and watched and should have intervened. But you would imagine, as a defense team for the parents, that would be your strategy, which it's curious why it hasn't happened here.
And that's presuming that we believe the parents.
Right.
I mean, let's face it, it's much easier to say they did it.
Yeah.
Wasn't us.
Sounds like there may be some video evidence. Maybe something in that video evidence is what convinced authorities to charge them with first degree. Maybe you're right. Maybe they were far more cooperating. We don't know, right? Yeah. We're sitting here talking about this. We haven't seen the evidence, but maybe there's something in that evidence we haven't seen that convinced them that there was more premeditation than kind of just being victims themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I said, and I've said many times before, we're going to watch this case. We're going to see what happens to the parents, and we're going to do an update when we have it for you, because Jessica deserves justice. Yeah. Before we move on to our next case, here's a quick word from our sponsor. If your least favorite question of the day is, what are we having for dinner? Then it might be time to check out HelloFresh. HelloFresh delivers pre-portioned ingredients to your door, including farm fresh produce that arrives within a week. So you get convenience without skimping on quality. HelloFresh cuts down on the time spent in the kitchen with meals ready in about 30 minutes or less. They even have quick and easy meals, which are 20-minute recipes with low prep and easy cleanup options. Plus, HelloFresh is 72% cheaper than a restaurant meal of the same quality. And you can save on average over $65 per month when you order HelloFresh instead of grocery shopping. I can tell you that the produce is fabulous and fresh, but I also want to talk about all the ingredients that come pre-portioned in little packages. I mean, literally down to the Parmesan cheese, or for example, the sour cream. I still have, a bunch of those that I like to use for other meals because it's so convenient. So go to HelloFresh.com/TCD16 and use code TCD16, that's for True Crime Daily, for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. That's HelloFresh.com/TCD16. Don't forget to use the code TCD16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Angie's List is now Angie, your home for everything home. And as any homeowner knows, caring for the place where you live can take, a lot of care. Luckily, Angie doesn't just have 20 plus years of home service experience. They've combined it with new tools to simplify how we tackle home care. Just bring them your project online or with the Angie app, answer a few questions, and Angie will handle the rest from start to finish, or let you compare quotes from local pros and connect instantly, which means you can cross things off your to-do list in just a few taps. And when you book and pay through Angie, you get their happiness guarantee, covering your project up to the full purchase price. So whether it's routine maintenance or a dream remodel, Angie makes it easy to get the job done. Let's start the year and your next project off right. Download the free Angie mobile app today or visit Angie.com. That's Angie, ANGI.com. Our next case is also horrific. A DHS employee is accused of kidnapping and sexually assaulting a woman who was in his care. Zachary Glover, 28 years old, an employee of the Oregon Department of Human Services, is accused of kidnapping a woman with significant disabilities in his care, driving her to a secluded location, and then sexually assaulting her. He was arrested on November 30th, and he's charged with 3 felonies: first-degree rape, first-degree sexual abuse, second-degree kidnapping, along with a misdemeanor for his official misconduct. Now, the victim. She has severe autism, cognitive issues. She communicates using pictures, videos, and drawings. She cannot communicate verbally and explain to someone what is going on. Here's why I think this case is very important. I try really hard on this podcast to cover cases about our most vulnerable, because I truly believe that it is people with special needs. Oftentimes we're talking about children here, but here we're talking about an adult and how vulnerable they are to those around them and those who are taking care of them. And obviously, this is not okay, but I think it's important that we always highlight these cases so people can be more vigilant.
Yeah.
This case is important. This case is very important. Thank God, she survived. But I have to wonder, how do you help someone with therapy when they've been through something so traumatic and communication itself is very challenged?
Yeah.
This is what I worry about.
Yeah.
How will she be helped?
I don't know. I don't know how somebody recovers from this, especially like you point out with the limited capacity that she has. It's also raised questions for me. How was she able to expose what was taking place?
Yes.
We haven't had much explanation as to how this was discovered and how do you have somebody like this testify? I don't know. I don't even know if that's possible. It's going to present a lot of interesting issues as far as proving what took place if this ever heads to a trial. Yeah,
absolutely. That part is fascinating because it didn't happen the revelation of the allegation didn't happen immediately. We don't know the details of that. Presumably, we will find out more as this case progresses. So here's the background, because something had to have happened. And, you know, it's very possible that she started reacting very strongly in his presence.
Yeah.
Right? She could have started having very physical reactions to seeing him.
Yeah.
That could have tipped off the other caseworkers in the facility.
Which makes me wonder, is this the only instance, or had it been ongoing to the point that they finally realized something was going on and were able to communicate with her in her limited capacity and find out what was taking place?
Yeah. Here's the background. So Zachary worked as a direct support crisis specialist for the Oregon DHS for about 4 years. He worked in the Office of Developmental Disabilities Stabilization and Crisis Unit. Okay, so this sounds to me as like we're dealing with the most vulnerable of the vulnerable.
Yeah.
The crisis unit operates a 24-hour residential program, and it also serves individuals who have either intellectual, mental, developmental disabilities, various challenges. So Zachary Glover was in charge of this particular residential facility where the victim lived. As part of his duties, Zachary took the victim on outings in a secure van to local restaurants. I think all of us have seen, as we're getting back to normal in our communities, when you see people from group homes who are out with counselors and are supervised, you know, whether they're shopping or they're stopping for a meal, let's say at a fast food place or a local restaurant. We've seen this, right?
Yeah.
So this is the environment in which she's being taken out, right, for social communication with people and you know, having a little bit of life. So he was taking her out only. And that's very possible that was normal. You know, I don't know how much attention she may have needed. So on November 2nd, while on an outing with the victim, Glover is alleged to have driven down a dead-end road toward a cemetery. Once he reached the dead end, he parked the van and then he sexually assaulted the woman. About 10 days later, the crisis unit, meaning the facility and the people there, learned, this is how it's been described publicly, we don't know more, learned of the attack, and then they called the Oregon State Police to investigate. So the charges are as follows. Well, first he was placed on administrative leave while the investigation was going on, and then the district attorney's office convened a grand jury. So, and that's interesting. Why, you know, I always ask this question, why go to the grand jury versus just charging the man?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. It's rare instance to use a grand jury, but there's a couple of reasons. One, it might be that they wanted to conduct some of their investigation in secret, because the grand jury is secret. The no public is allowed in. The findings are not disclosed to the public. So you can kind of conduct the investigation, as you were, to see if you have enough evidence to indict someone without alerting them that you're conducting that investigation for an indictment. The other reason might be that there's just so many moving parts. If you've got a lot of different defendants, might be a reason that you would do it, which doesn't obviously exist here. So it makes me wonder if they were just making sure that they had all their ducks in a row, as it were, before they released an indictment.
So he ultimately is indicted. Zachary Glover is charged with depriving the victim of her constitutional right to bodily integrity while acting under the color of law. The victim, again, communicates mostly through pictures, videos, and drawings. So what is interesting is that apparently the case is also being investigated by the Portland FBI. So the fact that one of the charges, this is in addition to the sexual assault and kidnapping charges, which would be state charges, what is this, the depriving the victim of her constitutional right to bodily integrity? Is that where the federal case would come in?
Yeah, that's a federal charge. It's unclear if there's both a dual kind of prosecution federally and statewide, but the feds would get involved, I imagine, because he was a government worker in the sense that he was in charge of this care facility. I'm thinking that might be the nexus. But I do also know that these types of federal charges carry incredibly onerous sentences. I mean, I'm not sure what his exposure is here, but I imagine it's very, very serious.
It's interesting. It's almost as if they couldn't get him, let's say, on the sexual assault charge and the kidnapping, that may be on the federal charge of, in essence, in my world, violating her constitutional rights, that might be the way.
Yeah. Yeah. You see this not all that often, but we've seen it kind of recently in the case with the George Floyd, with the 3 officers. They faced federal charges. Now they're going to face state charges. You see it in the McMichael case. We saw that, where they faced state charges and now they faced federal charges. It's not all that common, but there's sometimes a reason for it. And maybe that was here is that the feds wanted to make sure that a government worker was certainly prosecuted properly for this type of a crime of, like you said, victimizing an incredibly vulnerable person.
So if convicted, Glover faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. I presume that would be for all the charges. Zachary Edward Glover is being held without bail in the Marion County Jail.
No.
So, oh,
yeah.
My goodness, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot more we're going to learn about that case, too, because like you point out, how was there an eyewitness we don't know about that caught this? How long had this been going on? Was the victim able to somehow communicate this? There's a lot of vague descriptions that have been in the media to tell us what happened, but I imagine this will be fleshed out with details, and I hope this is one of those cases that you follow.
Yeah. It is time for our comment section. These are the crime cases you all are talking about on social media, and here is our producer, Will Updike. Hey, Will.
Hey, Anna. How's it going?
Good.
So this week we have kind of a heartwarming one. It's like about half heartwarming. So apparently an 18-year-old Loyola University student was turned into the police by his mother after he allegedly robbed a train conductor at gunpoint. Now, how this all went down was on a commuter train in the Chicago area. A passenger pulled out a semi-automatic handgun and announced a robbery. Do you have to announce a robbery for it to be a robbery? I think people get what's going on when you brandish the weapon.
Not if they've got, their AirPods in and they're not listening.
Yeah, actually, now
you have to get their attention.
Yeah, now you might need to get somebody's attention. But the suspect allegedly stole money from the conductor before fleeing on foot as the train pulled into the station. Now, the suspect in this one, Zion Brown, reportedly said he stole the money because he was hungry and he was trying to buy a snack before his next university lecture, which... some kind of snack there. But Brown's mother reportedly recognized him in the photos and drove him to the police station to turn himself in. Cannot imagine what that car ride to the police station must have been like.
Oh, he was scared, let me tell you. You think he's afraid of the police? Given the little bit you're telling me about his mother, I'm more afraid of his mother.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
So we got some great comments on this one on our True Crime Daily Facebook. A lot of people did side with the mother, obviously. Bonita L said, "This mother needs the key to the city. Good job, mother." Which, yeah, great. I mean, great work. She's practically Batman for this. Jessica J said, "This is holding your children accountable and teaching them right from wrong. Kudos to mom. It's a hard decision to make, but she knew what was best and the right action to take." A lot of people were overwhelming support for the mom in this one. Erica Teese had a personal story. She said, "I didn't rob anybody, but I did hack into my high school's computer system and change the grades on my report card. After I printed it out, I went back and changed it back so that way the teachers wouldn't know. And no one ever would have found out about this if my mom didn't call BS on my math score and turn me into the school." So another mom forcing the kid to be responsible for their actions.
How are you that brilliant to be able to hack in, but you're failing math at the same time?
There
Right?
you go. right? Because you have to have math skills, for hacking. You've got, algorithms and what, Yep.
Yeah, you would think so. I think it's an application situation, like maybe, maybe just shift some of those efforts. Carrie L said, going Wild West just for a snack? Man, if I was hungry, I'd just steal a snack, probably not rob someone at gunpoint, right? Which, fair. Yeah, that is that does seem to be an easier option. There was also some confusion about how this happened on a train in 2022. Brianna S. said, where did he find a train conductor to rob at gunpoint in 2022? Look, there are still trains out there. They exist, passenger trains, metro in many cities. But yeah, not often that you hear about a robbery on a train anymore.
Well, we're getting back to normal now. And this is a clear sign of that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Will. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye. That is our episode for this week. So, Josh, where can everyone reach you? Because you've got the podcast, and then I see you doing commentary on other stuff, and then you're working defending people.
Yeah, I'm hustling. I'm trying. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Joshua Ritter ESQ, and also please tune into the podcast. True Crime Daily Sidebar. We're releasing the episode Wednesday, March 2nd. We're releasing an episode this morning, an interview with Ashley Wilcott from Court TV. So I hope everybody tunes in and enjoys it.
Oh, fun. Fabulous. Okay. You can find me at Anna G News on all social media. We also want to make sure to thank our special sponsor, HelloFresh, for supporting this podcast. We're very appreciative of that. You can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to our True Crime Daily channel on YouTube. And don't forget to sign up and receive our newsletter. I actually checked on this last night with our executive producer. I said, really? And yes, we still send it out weekly. Just wanted to make sure, no false advertising here. Until next week, I'm your host, Ana Garcia. This is True Crime Daily, the podcast. And as we always say, don't do crime.